45 million years ago, a sea monster died here, right here, where you're standing, on sand that hasn't seen rain in months. It was 18 meters long. It had jaws that could crush bone. And it had legs, not fins, legs. A full femur, a knee joint, toes on a creature that was already unmistakably a whale. Its skeleton is still here, not in a museum, not behind glass, just lying on the surface of the Sahara Desert, where you could reach out and touch a bone from a predator that hunted warm inland seas while your ancestors were still learning to walk upright. That's find number 1. By find number 7, you're going to question whether the history you were taught was missing an entire chapter. Here's what the textbooks get wrong about the Sahara. They treat it like an absence, a gap, the yellow nothing between the Mediterranean and sub-Saharan Africa. But absence doesn't leave whale skeletons on its surface. Absence doesn't carve astronomical observatories older than Stonehenge. Absence doesn't scatter a field of glass across 1,000 square kilometers from a catastrophe that, after nearly a century of searching, still has no confirmed source. The Sahara isn't empty. It's a lid. Underneath it, ancient ocean floors, vanished civilizations, art that doesn't have comfortable explanations, structures whose geometry only makes sense from above, and a language written on stone monuments, readable phonetically, that no one on Earth currently understands. 7 locations, each one documented, each one real. And when you line them up, scientists don't argue. They go quiet, because the picture they form together isn't the one anyone wants to explain. Let's start with the bones. 200 kilometers southwest of Cairo, the desert floor is littered with skeletons. No excavation pit, no museum lighting, just enormous dark bones lying in open sunlight the way a dropped pencil lies on a floor. Vertebrae the size of serving platters. Jawbones, longer than a man is tall. Rib cages that arch out of the sand like the frames of broken ships. Hundreds of them. Wadi al-Haytham, the Valley of Whales. The animals here are basilosaurids, the most famous Basilosaurus, a marine predator 18 meters long that controlled these waters 45 million years ago. Top of the food chain, absolute apex. And it had hind legs, full anatomical hind. Limbs, not symbolic nubs, not evolutionary ghosts too small to see. A working femur, a knee, toes, on a whale. What you're looking at is evolution mid-sentence. A creature already committed to the ocean, still carrying the memory of land in its own skeleton. But the legs aren't even the most disorienting part. The most disorienting part is the ground under your feet. 45 million years ago, this was an inland arm of the ancient Tethys Sea. Warm, shallow, teeming with life. When these animals died, they sank to the bottom and were buried in marine sediment. Then the sea retreated. 16. Land rose. The climate dried. And the sediment became this. The Sahara Desert is a former ocean floor, not metaphorically, geologically. The sand you're standing on was once mud at the bottom of a sea, which means when we call the Sahara barren, we're not describing its nature. We're just describing its most recent phase. And the next phase, the one that came between the vanishing ocean and the arrival of the desert, was stranger than either. There's a dry lake bed in western Egypt, flat, featureless, the kind of landscape your eye moves across without finding anything to hold, except for the stones. Some of them are standing upright, deliberately, with an orientation that can't be accidental, because when archaeologist Fred Wendorf mapped their positions and ran the astronomical calculations backward 6,000 years, the alignment resolved into something exact. The stones track the summer solstice sunrise. They mark the rising positions of stars. The arrangement encodes the sky as it appeared during a specific window of the past, with accuracy that holds up under modern verification. This is Nabta Playa, and it predates Stonehenge by at least 1,000 years. Built by cattle herders, people with no metals, no written language, and a lake that was actively drying up around them. They looked at the sky for long enough, with enough precision, to turn stone into a permanent calendar. Some of those stones weigh close to a ton. The official archaeological position is careful. Sophisticated pastoral culture, advanced observation, knowledge passed through generations, all reasonable. But the question it doesn't answer is, why this level of precision? Tracking seasons makes sense for survival, but the stellar alignments at Nabta go beyond agricultural necessity. The complexity implies not just observation, but obsession. A culture that had decided the sky was worth encoding in stone at enormous effort for reasons that died with them. When the lake finally dried for good, the community left. Everything they knew, everything they believed, every story that explained why the stars mattered gone. The stones are still exactly where they placed them. 5,000 years ago, the Central Sahara was grassland. Rivers ran, lakes filled. Elephants and giraffes moved in herds across what is now one of the most hostile landscapes on Earth. We know this because someone painted it. Over 15,000 images cover the sandstone cliffs of Tassili Enajor in southern Algeria, the largest prehistoric rock art site in the world. Animals rendered with museum-quality accuracy. People swimming, hunting, living ordinary lives in a world that no longer exists. The detail is extraordinary. Muscle movement on a running antelope, the specific curve of a bull horn. These were not primitive scrawls. The people who made them could draw, which is exactly why a certain category of image here is so difficult to dismiss. Scattered through the oldest layers, predating the pastoral scenes, predating most of the animal paintings, are figures that don't follow the same logic. Massive rounded heads, featureless, proportions that don't match the human body, as carefully observed everywhere else in this same art. Some are several meters tall. In one famous image, an enormous dark figure with a smooth circular head looms over smaller human forms like something from a different category of existence. The French explorer Henri Lot, not a mystic, a trained field researcher who spent over a year documenting this site, looked at these figures and called one of them the Great Martian God. He couldn't find better language. The standard explanations are ritual masks, shamanic visions, symbolic beings, all archaeologically plausible. But here is the thing that keeps this uncomfortable. The same people who painted these figures also painted animals with photographic accuracy. They knew exactly what a real body looked like. When they chose to paint something that looks non-human, it was a choice, not a limitation. They were depicting something. What that something was, we genuinely don't know. Forget everything before this for a moment. In the desert between Egypt and Libya, there is a field of glass, natural glass, 28 million years old, scattered across roughly 1,000 square kilometers of open desert, pale, yellow, translucent, some pieces the size of your fist, some larger. Clean enough that when you find a piece, your first instinct is that it was left by a modern process. To form this glass, you need temperatures between 600 and 2,000 degrees Celsius applied instantly across an enormous surface. That kind of energy comes from one source, an impact event, either a meteorite strike or an atmospheric explosion from a disintegrating body entering Earth's atmosphere at the wrong angle. Both scenarios should leave evidence. A crater, a specific chemical signature consistent with known impact material. There is no crater. Geologists have been searching for nearly 100 years. Ground surveys, satellite imaging, geological mapping. The crater that should be there isn't. The glass exists. Temperature signature exists. The energy source is genuinely disputed. And then, in 1922, Howard Carter opened a tomb in the Valley of the Kings, and something odd appeared in the inventory. In the chest jewelry of Tutankhamun, among objects selected for a god king's journey into eternity, was a carved scarab, made of Libyan desert glass. The Egyptians had traveled hundreds of kilometers into the deep desert to collect this material, brought it back, shaped it, placed it against the chest of their pharaoh. They found glass left by a catastrophe with no known origin and decided it was sacred, enough for the most important burial in their civilization. Maybe they were responding to something we've lost the ability to feel, or maybe they simply recognized that the glass was from somewhere else, somewhere outside ordinary experience. We still don't know what made it. That hasn't changed. From space, the Sahara is mostly featureless, a broad wash of brown and tan that the eye slides off, except for one thing: concentric rings in Mauritania, a bullseye cut into the earth, 50 kilometers across, so geometrically precise that early astronauts used it as a navigation landmark, the one reliable fixed point in 5,000 kilometers of nothing. Scientists call it the Rick-Hat structure, or the Eye of the Sahara. The explanation is geological, a dome of ancient rock, eroded into rings by millions of years of wind and rain, different rock layers wearing down at different rates. That explanation is probably correct. Here's what makes this difficult. Anyway, in 360 BCE, Plato wrote a description of a lost civilization called Atlantis. Not vague poetry, a near engineering specification. Alternating rings of land and water surrounding a central elevated island, a wide flat plain beyond the outer ring. Location, west of the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. Then someone held Plato's description next to a satellite image of the Rick-Hat structure. The rings match. The surrounding plain matches. The The location matches. Mauritania is west of Gibraltar. The scale, depending on how you translate the Greek unit of measurement Plato used, matches uncomfortably closely. Geological surveys inside the structure have found evidence of ancient freshwater deposits. During the Green Sahara period, when this region had rivers and lakes, this formation sat inside a habitable landscape that could have supported large settlements. Plato described internal rivers and springs. The formation has evidence of fresh water. None of this is proof. Archaeologists have not found a city here. The Rikhat structure is officially a geological formation, not a ruin. But every other proposed location for Atlantis requires you to stretch the geography, bend the numbers, or ignore the text. The Rikhat structure requires almost none of that, which leaves you with two options. Either this is an extraordinary coincidence, or Plato's account preserved the memory of something real, and it's been visible from orbit this whole time, in the middle of a desert, while everyone was looking at the bottom of the ocean. Sudan. Fly over it and count. 1 pyramid, 2, 10, 50. More than 250 ancient pyramids, clustered along both banks of the Nile in the Sudanese desert. Narrow, steep-angled, with small entrance chapels, some partially destroyed. All of them real, all of them old. There are more ancient pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt. Most people have never heard of this. Meroe was the capital of the Kingdom of Kush, a civilization that rose independently along the Upper Nile, developed its own architecture, its own religious traditions, its own written script, and traded across a network that reached Rome, Arabia, and possibly India. And in the 8th century BCE, Kush conquered Egypt. Kushite kings ruled as pharaohs for nearly a century, the 25th dynasty. The people building these steep pyramids in Sudan became the rulers of Egypt. That's not a footnote, that's a chapter that got dropped. But here is the thing that genuinely disturbs researchers. The Meroitic script Kush's writing system was phonetically decoded in the 19th century. The sounds of the letters are known. You can read inscriptions out loud. The language itself has never been translated. We can hear it, we cannot understand it. Royal proclamations, religious texts, inscriptions on monuments. We can pronounce every syllable and grasp none of the meaning. An entire civilization's written record, technically readable, completely sealed. And underneath some of these pyramids, ground surveys have detected subsurface anomalies, chambers and cavities that have never been opened. In 1834, an Italian treasure hunter named Giuseppe Ferlini dynamited the tops off dozens of these pyramids looking for gold. He found some. He destroyed everything else. What survived is already remarkable. What's still buried in structures not yet touched, maybe more so. A civilization with more pyramids than Egypt. A language that resists translation. Sealed chambers. And almost no space in the standard history of the ancient world. And now the one that nobody talks about, because the others are at least cataloged, studied, named. This one is mostly just there. The Ahagar Mountains in central Algeria, the highest point in the country, a volcanic highland that has been Tuareg territory for centuries and archaeological territory for almost no one. Between 2019 and 2022, satellite analysis of this region identified more than 800 stone structures spread across the plateau and surrounding landscape circles, lines, long enclosures, geometric arrangements repeated across, of kilometers with a consistency that cannot be accidental. 800 structures, most with no official documentation, no dating, no excavation report, no scientific description beyond the satellite coordinates. 800. Some of these formations only resolve into patterns from above. On the ground, they look like scattered rocks. Gain altitude, even just to a neighboring ridge, and the chaos organizes into geometry. The same phenomenon seen at Nazca, at the Kazakh steppe, at the stone structures of Arabia, which forces the same impossible-feeling question every time. Who was the intended audience? From what vantage point was this meant to be seen? We don't know, because no one has systematically studied this place. The reasons are straightforward: remoteness, political instability, funding gaps, the sheer scale of the Sahara relative to the number of researchers working inside it. But here is what that means in practice. We are in the 21st century. We have satellites that can read individual letters from orbit, and there are hundreds of ancient stone structures in the central Sahara that no scientist has formally examined. The archive isn't just buried. Parts of it haven't even been opened. 7 locations, all documented, all real. A whale with legs on a former ocean floor. An observatory that predates Stonehenge by 1,000 years. 15,000 pieces of rock art, including figures that trained researchers still can't explain. A field of glass from a catastrophe with no confirmed source. Concentric rings that match the most famous. Lost city description in human history. A civilization with more pyramids than Egypt and a language permanently sealed. And 800 stone structures that no one has studied. Here's why scientists go quiet when these are lined up together. It's not that any single one breaks the official timeline. It's what they collectively imply, that for a very long period, across a very large space, something was happening in the Sahara that we have not fully accounted for. Civilizations building, watching, painting, writing, vanishing, leaving traces we have only begun to find. The sand didn't erase the past, it preserved it. And the longer researchers work here, the more clearly this becomes not a story about an empty desert, but about how much we assumed was empty that wasn't. How much we wrote off as barren that was once alive. How much of what we think we know about the deep human past is actually just what managed to survive outside the Sahara, while everything inside it waited, buried, for someone to look. We are not at the end of this story. We haven't found the beginning yet. Which of these 7 hit hardest? Leave it below. And if the Sahara you walked away with isn't the same one you came in with, you know what to do. Doesn't.